Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Thriving LDS Singles Podcast. We're so excited to have you here, and we have two guests for you today, and they're Darren and Lorraine, and they're going to tell you their story. They've been married for 3 months, so just newlyweds, and they're going to tell you their story of dating and marriage. So over to you guys. Oh, and Kim, sorry.
Yes. Hi, everybody. and Darren and Lorraine will introduce themselves because I want to give us a little bit of background about who you are, what you do. And I think a lot of people probably know you from the podcast because Lorraine's been on before. So,
so welcome. And tell us about yourselves.
I'm Darren Johansen, born and raised in Utah. And this is my amazing, brilliant, super, super awesome wife, Lorraine.
Oh,
go ahead.
I thought you were going to keep going about yourself.
Oh, I can go on about
you. Yeah, you go.
I should go on about you.
Yourself. You go.
So I was married for 31 years, LDS, temple marriage, return missionary, all those fun things, even an Eagle Scout back in the day when that seemed to be a big deal. And was surprised after 31 years to find out that we weren't going to be forever. And that was an interesting journey. And pretty excited to have had the journey. There's a phrase that I have come to really appreciate, and it's kind of a question: is this happening to you or for you? And what are you going to do with it? And so I will tell you a little bit more about how we met, but I'll let Lorraine introduce herself and anything else you wanted me to say.
Yeah, he's a marriage and family counselor, which is pretty great because I always said to my friends, I just would love a good man that counsels me. I didn't know it'd actually be a counselor, but bonus. So I was married for 34 years, single for over 8 years. And I have a calling that I didn't know if I was prepared for, other than I was single. And it is the multi-area co-chair for Utah and for Utah singles. And we've been working on this new church initiative, which has been great. And a lot of people thought I was going to be released, but we're going to stay for another year at least till it gets rolled out. But I love that calling, and I love being able to serve the singles. And it's been a sweet way now that we're married. You show up a little different in being able to serve for them. So yeah, pretty great. I have 4 kids. He's got 2 kids. We now have 6 kids. It's really wonderful. It's been good. Not easy, but it's been really good.
It's awesome. And I can't wait to hear more about all of that.
Yeah.
Because Lorraine has that calling, so many people know her, and because I was born and raised here in Utah, so many people knew me too. And so it's been very interesting as I went through that whole process of deciding, do I go back? Do I date again? And one of the things that I think is so important, and as a single, I struggled with this because I'm like, well, what if I jump back in and then, 30 years down the road, my then spouse says, oh, just kidding, we're not going to be together anymore, right? I mean, because you just don't know, right? But I realized that Heavenly Father has a plan, and it's a perfect plan, and we're all a part of that plan. And that plan includes creating celestial relationships, covenant relationships, as we talked about early on. Lorraine's sister came up to us, and we were at church, and just before Christmas, and she asked me, what are your intentions with my sister?
It was the first meeting. They had just met him at hearing my 90-year-old mother sing in church. So this is my family meeting him there.
That's right. Hey, you want to go to church? And oh, by the way, my family's going to be there. So we come out of the sacrament meeting. We're standing in the hall, and her sister says, what are your intentions with my sister? And I said, I can answer that question in 3 words. And she's like, oh, okay. And I said, create celestial companionship. And really
she walked away and said, yeah, I don't have any more questions for you.
I love that. That's an
Yeah,
awesome answer.
it was great.
Well,
So one of the,
especially, I know, just sorry, I want to hear what you're going to say, Darren, but I know Lorraine had a pretty challenging first marriage. I mean, I can imagine her family was very protective of her. So,
understandably so. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, go ahead. Let's hear the.
So back to that idea that Heavenly Father has a plan, and that includes creating celestial companionships, right? And that doesn't mean that it's always going to be in this life. I mean, for some, Elder Holland says some blessings come now, some come later, and some come in the next life, right? And so we don't know, but what it does mean to us is that we're part of that plan. So we should be progressing towards covenant relationships and be prepared for ourselves. And one of the things that I learned after Lorraine and I started spending time, of course, when I first met her, which was amazing, we probably don't have time to tell that whole story, but I walked into a single adult event after I decided that I need to go. And I've spoken at single adult events before when I was married. I've taught dance at single adult events when we were married. And I remember walking out once and saying to my former spouse, I don't ever want to be in that place, right? It's just do whatever you do, don't divorce me. Well, it happened. And so I had to face all of those things and decide, well, what am I going to do? And I walked in and Lorraine was on the stand and I was with a good friend of mine who had been so kind and loving. And that's one of the things I would say to singles is keep inviting, keep loving. There was never any pressure. There was no, you've got to come. And I think that we can truly be peacemakers by just loving and inviting. Hey, by the way, there's a fireside, there's a dance, there's this conference, and he had been so kind and just invited me. So I
Like
came
40 times you said.
Oh yeah,
He was
probably 40, 50 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elder Kieran's phrase in relentless pursuit, right? I mean, that's a great thing because Jesus certainly is. And my friend was just so much that way, right? So we walk in and Lorraine's on the stand and I turn to him and I'm just looking at her, just staring and just going, wow, tell me. And I'm listening to him tell me about her. And so that was the first night we met. And a short while after that, by the way, the end was that Lorraine found out that I teach a class called How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk or Jerkette. And being so great at her calling, she's like, we need to have that class for the singles. Can you help with that? I'm like, yeah, sure. And so she says to my friend, well, you have my number. You can give it to Darren. So that was pretty awesome. And I was all over that because I knew that was my opportunity to talk to her. And then I found out she wasn't dating. And I'm like, uh-oh, that's a problem. But we worked through that. So many people ask, because I am a marriage and family counselor and because I teach this class about how not to fall in love with a jerk or jerkette, how do I know when to date? How do I know, should we commit? And we can talk a little bit more about that. But I feel like I've shared a little bit of that story and I'd love to have Lorraine tell you her side of that.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, yes, I would love to hear.
Yeah, so the bit, you're not dating. So here he is, this guy's like clapped eyes on you going, oh, her. And goes, oh, yeah, I'm not going to date anybody. So,
Yeah. Well, I had dated a lot. And then I realized that everybody I dated was a no. And that made me really pause. And I actually called my counselor who I hadn't seen for a while and said, I think I need a tune-up and to talk. And through that, I realized I need to step back and I think it's me. And because of who I'm attracting, because I know there are good men. There are very good men out there. And so I realized that it was me. And so, and taking that time to discover that and be really prayerful about that and being intentional about wondering what there was about me that needed some little tweaking and some fine tuning. But yet I was making space because I knew that I would be married. I knew because that's what I wanted. But every time I went to the temple, and I've shared this a lot, and please steal it from me, but I would go to the prayer roll and write my name on one side, and on the other side, I would write my eternal companion with a heart and put it in the prayer roll. And I was talking with the temple president, and I said, I have a confession to make because I was feeling a little guilty. Is that something you write? But I felt really prompted to do it every time I went to the temple. And he said, is that an affliction? Is that a need that you want? Is that a righteous desire? And would it be that? He said it's very appropriate to put it in there. And so even though I would say I am not dating, I was also very open and feeling like I don't know when he'll show up, but he'll show up. I just didn't know it'd be September 8th at Fireside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the story of Wendy Nelson telling about, like, she knew who this person was, even though she didn't know who it was. She was literally buying a chair and all that sort of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, so the inspiration's there before you meet the person. The softening
Yeah.
or the
But getting me in a better place was really key for me. Yeah.
How long did that take, or how did you navigate that, Darren? Did you like?
Well, the great news is that my mission president was really good about teaching the commitment pattern and teaching us to be diligent and persevere. And so I knew that my one in was that Lorraine wanted the jerks class for the single adult group. And so I asked her, I'm like, hey, what's your schedule like tomorrow? So this is Sunday night. And she's like, well, I have time in the morning. I said, great, I'll be up early. And so I think it was 5:30 or 6 a.m. when I called, the next day. And we were supposed to talk about the jerks class. And we ended up talking for almost 2.5 hours about
Not about the jerks class.
about Lorraine and her family and a little bit about me. And we just had a really great connection, which created a foundation for us to work from. And then I wasn't in relentless pursuit, meaning calling her every day saying, let's go out, let's go out, let's go out. It was, I'm thinking to myself, when am I going to see her again? Well, she's going to be at the fireside. I wasn't ready to go to dances yet. That freaked me out a lot. I love to dance. I teach country western swing dance, but I didn't know that I was ready for that. And again, this friend would tell me when the dances were, and I was talking to Lorraine one night about dates for the jerks class. And she mentioned that it might be good if I showed up at the dance in case people had questions about the jerks class. And I remember driving, I was headed home from work, and we were talking about this, and she was saying, this is where the dance is. And I just thought, I don't know that I'm ready for that. And then I just thought, well, when am I going to be ready? Right. And so I was brave. I went, and it was not as scary as I thought it was. And like Lorraine says, it's just a dance. And so that was a great thing. And I think that people need to just embrace the fact that we're on a journey, and there's a reason that we're in the place we are. And Lorraine is such a great example of saying, okay, well, what do I need to work on, and how do I do that? And how can I be really intentional about showing up and just saying, okay, what's next for me, and being open to those possibilities. And so from September 8th, like I said, the next day, the 9th, we had a 2.5 hour conversation, and we talked a little bit, texted a little bit, created some dates for the jerks class. And we even had a few hiccups. Lorraine went out of town with her family and got sick. And so there was a little bit of time where I thought, oh, maybe this is not, going to work out the way that I hope. And anyway, and so I kept seeing her at the singles events. And again, just tried to be there and serve, and just, learn and befriend rather than.
Okay, I have to jump in here a little bit because I found out how old he was. And so
Old guy.
No. And when I found out how old he was, I thought, oh, all bets are off. He's not going to want to date me because I'm 5.5 years older than he is. So I know, right, Kate? So I just turned that off and thought, oh, he won't be interested in me at all. So there was that whole, so I didn't I didn't catch any of his being flirty or being anything. I just dismissed it all. So
Right. Makes sense.
I'm a little clueless. So yeah.
So gratefully, the first jerks class, is the late November. The first one was the Friday before Thanksgiving, and I think the second one was the Friday after. And Lorraine generously offered to hold the class in her home, because sometimes it's tough to find a church building. And so we had 45 people. I mean, a lot of people here at the house, and it was really awesome. And I thought to myself, we must have spent enough time together that there's a little comfort, right? Because she's inviting some strange dude into her house. Now, the other thing, and I'm going to rewind just a little bit back to November the 8th. So November 8th, I found out that Lorraine is a real estate agent, and I had some questions about Airbnb, possibly selling my house, because my house was next to my ex. Same ward, be a little tough, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things that's challenging often for men is that when there's a divorce, there's this assumed belief that he must have done something wrong. He's bad. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, and especially my ex. That's not the point. But it was hard to go to church. It was hard to interact with my bishop and my stake president, not because, just because that was new to me. And one of the things that I think is so important, male or female, is that the most important thing is, will we keep our covenants? Are we going to stay close to the Lord? And sometimes that's really hard. The opposition was beyond anything I'd ever experienced or imagined. And so I knew that if I did my best to be faithful, and I am not perfect, nobody is, but if I did what I could and kept going to church, and I found people at church that I knew that I could sit by these people and it would be okay. And, I just kept doing it, because I know that one of the laws is the law of obedience and the law of sacrifice. And so, how am I doing that? And if we're really part of Heavenly Father's plan, and we are, then that's going to happen. And I believed whether that was Lorraine, and I say that because Lorraine was the person that I had met. I met two women that first fireside that I went to. One was a girl that I had known from high school, and we connected and talked, and then the other was Lorraine. And so, I knew, and one of the things that Lorraine and I talked about early on was, I am intent on creating celestial companionship, and I did not want to be divorced again, and I didn't believe that was the right thing. And so I invited Lorraine to come to my house, and
I say it was under false pretenses
right, yeah,
for an
But-
Airbnb.
but-
It was one of my specialties. So
yeah. She told me that she wasn't dating, so I was pretty bummed about that. But she comes to my house, and it's a Friday night. We had looked at our calendars. That was the first open time that we had. So she comes after work on Friday night, and again, I'm freaking out, because here's this beautiful woman coming into my house, and I'm a single guy, and I'm going to show her my house because she's a real estate professional, Airbnb. And I'm like, so I'm having this little freak out, and she comes in and was just so professional and so good.
remember,
And-
I'm not dating, and
and-
he's too
Yeah.
young for me.
That's right. And so we sit down on the couch, and Lorraine's explaining to me the options, and I realize, oh my goodness, it's like 7:30, and she came straight from work, and she probably hasn't had dinner. And so I said, hey, I totally respect that you're not dating, but I feel to invite you to go to dinner. It could be a business dinner, it's not a date, whatever.
Yeah,
And-
he worked it.
Yeah. Anyway, and she goes, well, yeah, we could do that, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe she really isn't dating, right? And she later told me, she's like, man, I was hoping you would invite me to dinner. So
I did.
anyway,
I
but
did.
we walk out. Now, again, as singles, some tough things to navigate, right? My former spouse lives right next door. My son is there. He loves to do campfires. So we come out of my house and there's my son. His friends are coming over because they're going to have a campfire. And I'm like, and so I just turned to Larry and I said, I'm going to introduce you to my son. And again, it's
Well,
tough.
and I said, this is probably going to be real tough for him because I think I'm the first woman he's ever seen you with. So navigate this well and just be really open because that's hard. That's got to be really hard. And he's returning, he's older. He's not like he's young, a young kid.
26.
Yeah. And so that it's just really, really hard. This is my heart,
So that intentionality, being open, being vulnerable, transparent, all very important things. Hard things for a lot of people, especially hard for men. Typically in my counseling practice, I have a lot of people that they really need to work on that. And how can I do that? And how do I let my feelings out? And so for people to get into this and decide when is it right to date, when is it right to come to a single adult event. I mean, all of those things are great questions. If you have anger and frustration and have not started the forgiveness process, and it's a journey, it's not a destination. Oh, I forgave. And a lot of people think it is, right? Then you really do need to work on yourself and take that time. Lorraine went to counseling. I went to counseling. As a matter of fact, when I was going through my divorce, I started working with 3 different counselors because I are one. But I was very intentional. I was working with all 3 of them for very specific reasons. And it's one of the greatest gifts that I've ever given myself because the most successful people on the planet employ coaches, mentors, and counselors. And some people say, well, I can't afford it. And I say, I think we can't afford not to. If working with a counselor, coach, mentor accelerates our healing and helps us to be better, so we show up for other people and use the gifts that God gave us to bless the world, man, we all ought to be there a lot. And so, we went out, had this amazing dinner. We laughed, we joked. And because Lorraine wasn't dating and this wasn't a date, we could just be fun. And so that's the other thing that I would say is find groups that you can go out and be with and do stuff. And even though it wasn't a group, neither one of us saw this as a date. And so, we talked for hours and it was, again, so nice. But because of that intentionality, because I knew the Jerks principles, 90 days, no touch, that's a big deal. If you haven't taken the Jerks class, I strongly recommend it. If you're in the singles world, because it's a great way to figure out how to build healthy relationships. And everything that we teach in the gospel of Jesus Christ is supported 100% by the research in the Jerks book. And so that's one of the reasons why I teach it.
I'm going to interrupt there because do they teach it remotely? I don't know if it's offered in all the places that this podcast gets. So how would you find it?
It's not. We've had some people ask, and one of the things that we've considered doing is setting it up on Zoom. One of the things that makes that a little bit challenging is, if they're on Zoom, how do they interact? But I am willing to travel if there's a group in a location. You need about 25 to 30 people just for critical mass. But if I'm going to travel and, especially if there's fees, as I'm not independently wealthy, I'd love to just pay for it. But, we have to figure out how to get people there and do it. But yeah, I'm happy to do that. And again, if somebody said, hey, we've got a group of 25 people, can we do a Zoom presentation? Yeah. It's a 10-hour class. We cram it into 7 hours, 2 3.5-hour classes. It's best we've been doing Monday nights, Monday night 1 week, Monday night the next week. Highly recommend. It's a great class. But what that did for me and for us and for everybody that's used the Jerks principles is it creates a safe space, because the purpose of the first encounter is to decide if you want a second encounter. And if you're not romantically involved, and so many people go from, having a really, really challenging marriage, and then they jump in and they want to hold hands and kiss and do all of those things that they did because being single is lonely. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing that, then you're not thinking clearly. And that's one of the things the research says, that when you think you're in love, it's kind of like buying stuff that you really knew you didn't want. Timeshare presentation. I'm joking a little bit about that, but all of us have bought something and then have buyer's remorse. Well, we don't want to have relationship remorse because we weren't wise in the choices that we made. So we finished our dinner and Lorraine leaves. And I believe in being a gentleman, opening doors for ladies and just being kind. And so I was concerned because I knew that she had to drive home. It was late when she left. And I'm like, hey, will you just text me when you get home so I know you got home safe? Because, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. I would have, if it was a date, I would have picked her up, right? And opened her anyway. And so after she left, I was just like, you know what? That was the best non-date ever. And so I texted that to her and that kind of opened some doors, but it took us a little while to get there. But it was
We
great.
spent, following those principles of no touch, and Darren calls it time talk together. We spent hours and hours talking. And when I say we talked and we laughed and we cried together, getting to know each other without ever touching. And we didn't really even date. We didn't date, go on traditional dates. We just talked and talked and talked and really got to know each other in a really beautiful way. Yeah, I've never done that before.
And a lot of people ask, what do you talk about? Well, if you've been married, and both of us had for over 3 decades, right? What worked? What didn't? What did you learn? One of the things that we both brought to this relationship in dating was a willingness to be open and just ask questions. We talked about everything. And some people go, well, I don't know how to do that. You can go online. There's books about questions to ask your dating partner and date your mate. And Brigham Young University puts out a lot of stuff. But in the Jerks workbook, in the back of the workbook, there's 99 questions. And I tell you that if people would sit down and they're copyrighted people, so please don't. Respect John Van Epp. This is hard work, but pay the money for the workbook and get the questions. But you should never ask a question to somebody else that you don't know your answer to. And so I tell people when I teach the Jerks class, you go through those 99 questions, because if you don't know your answers, I'm going to make a bold statement and say you probably shouldn't be out there looking for. I'm not saying you can't date. I'm just saying if you're looking for a companion, but you don't know who you are and why you are, and you haven't dealt with some of your stuff, right? If there was stuff that contributed to other relationships, not even marriages, but other relationships going south, then be honest with yourself and say, go to your friends and family and say, hey, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And I worked with so many different counselors, but I was asking people, tell me areas that maybe I'm blind and don't see what's there. Those were things we talked about. What were you not aware of in your prior relationships, and what would you do different? And again, the 99 questions, we went through them. Some of them we already knew. And so we're like, meh, because when you I estimated, somebody asked me, how much time did you spend talking? Phone calls, sitting on the couch, opposite ends of the couch, being together, talking after a fireside or after a meeting or at the dance or whatever. I estimate we spent over 100 hours talking before we started dating. If you add to that the fact that Lorraine was in both of the Jerks classes that we taught, almost 4 hours each night, another 8 hours on top of that, learning about Jerks principles. So we had a pretty solid foundation before there was ever any, and it wasn't that I wasn't attracted, but we just were so intent on making sure that we were clear-minded. And when you touch too soon, you lose your mind and you don't make wise decisions.
So true. Yeah.
And not touching, let's say that we had some conversations and then we found out that it's just not, then you haven't lost nothing. Or
Yes,
maybe each of you would find somebody else that might be better suited. Because we should be cheering each other on in this endeavor, right? And so you haven't lost anything. And I have held the hands and hearts of a lot of heartbroken men and women.
Yeah.
Who have
I'm pretty
touched
sure
us.
Kim had a question that I think we talked about once before about how how early do you talk to people about the mistakes of your previous marriage? Wasn't that something we talked about once, Kim? It's like people get really scared of, like, if you say something soon, it's like, oh, weirdo person.
There is that most of the time when I go on a first date, for some reason I get the whole story. I don't know if it's just like that's just common or what, but I get like from, I was abused as a child all the way through third, fourth
it's
marriage
unhealthy.
and all the things.
So yeah, no, it's unhealthy. It's the throw up.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
It's unhealthy because you shouldn't be sharing personal information with somebody that you don't know what they're going to do with it. But more importantly, so in the Jerks class, we talk about the RAM board, the relationship attachment model, and it talks about the fact that you need to spend time talk together, and that if you touch too soon, but we're not just talking about physical touch. There are 5 elements of intimacy. There's mental and emotional and physical and spiritual and social intimacy. And when I talk about physical intimacy, I'm not talking about sexual intimacy. I'm talking about, is this person a couch potato, and no judgment there? Or is this person somebody that likes to run marathons? Because if you're in a relationship with somebody that loves to run marathons and you want to curl up in front of the fire and read Moby Dick or some other really long novel, or play Monopoly till 3 a.m, right? And they want to go out and do crazy stuff like light stuff on fire, probably not, it's not a high compatibility, right? But if all you're doing is giving people tonsillectomies, and I mean that in the nicest way, then you're not thinking about those questions. And so it's really important. If I don't know that you're trustworthy and I rely on you, before I know you're trustworthy, I put both of us at risk. That's why that verbal throw up, the verbal vomit, whatever you want to call it, is so unhealthy. And that's why you do need to spend time talk together to get to know each other and decide, is this person somebody that I feel confident that I want to share this information that's deeply personal? And if not, if we went out on a first date and somebody said to me, well, how much money do you make? That may be a great first date question. For some people, it may be a horrible first date question, but I'm going to do something that I think is so healthy. And I'm going to say, well, that's a great question. Why would you ask? And if you qualify the question, then you can find out, right? I had somebody in my Jerks class once, and she had a sizable amount of alimony and child support. And when she married, that all went away. That's how her divorce decree. I'm not saying that's how everybody is, but so she doesn't want to spend a lot of time talk together if she knows that her children are going to suffer, right? Or she might suffer financially, and money's not the most important thing, right? Mm-hmm. Then that would be a good question. So if I was on a first date with somebody, and they asked that question, and I said, well, why would that be important for you? And she said that, I'd say, well, let's talk about it. Or if I'm not comfortable answering, I could simply say, you know what? I'm not in a place where I feel like we're committed enough to answer that question. If that's a deal breaker for you, okay, we're gonna shake hands and part friends, and I'm gonna wish you the best.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for being part of our podcast today.